everyone, it's me again. I'm Lena and I'm from the Healthcare Landscape Group. In this video, I'm going to talk about my main video with the topic, the waste processes of the urinary and digestive systems. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about four main parts. The first part is I'm going to talk about the introduction. I'm going to introduce what these two systems are, and then I'm going into the main parts. The first part is I'm going to talk about the parts that are involved in these processes, and then the second part, which is the main part, the third part, which is the main part, is the processes of both of these processes. And then the final part is about the conclusion. I'm going to conclude about the digestive and urinary systems and just give a summary of what I've talked about in the main part. Now, without further ado, let's get started on our first part, the introduction to these parts. Well, our body is a complex machine that works 24/7 and it is never stopping. Well, two of those processes is the urinary and digestive system. We need food and we eat food to survive. And of course, to digest that food, we need the digestive system. We also need water to live. And water is maybe more important than food because we need water to be able to keep in our body temperature, hydrates our whole body, and helps them to do a lot of things. Of course, we need the urinary system too. It helps to filter the blood out and then take all of the water that we drink, and then took all of the nutrients out of the water, and the excess waste will come out to our bladder, our urethra, and to the toilet. Now, let's start first with the digestive system. What is the digestive system? The digestive system is a system that helps us to digest food when we eat in. The average human eats 1 to 2.7 kilograms of food per day. That is 365 kilograms per year, approximately. 365 kilograms per year. Now, how do we digest all of that food? Well, we have the digestive system. The digestive system, like I said before, helps us to process all of it and then comes out to the bottom. But it's a very complex system. It's arguably one of the most complex systems in the whole body. Now, the first part, the parts that are involved in it. Well, there are 10 main parts that are involved in this. The first part is the mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, the duodenum, the small intestines, the large intestines, and the anus. Well, this is just the gastrointestinal tract, and it is from our mouth down to our anus. It's the parts that help us to break down the food. What are the trio of organs? Well, the trio of organs is the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. It helps to break down the food in a different way, chemically. Well, what I mean here it will help the other parts in the gastrointestinal tract to break down food by producing gastric juices, digestive juices, acids into our body, mostly our stomach, and then slush them all together, and then they will dissolve into those materials and acids. Now, that is the first part. How many parts are in this large intestine? Well, you may not know this, some of you may not know this, but the large intestines include the ascending colon, the descending colon, the cecum, and the rectum. So, that is the large intestines. The small intestines include the duodenum, which we will talk about later in the process. Now, let's talk about the process of the digestive system. Firstly, it starts in our mouth, of course. course, or our oral cavity. First, we eat the food, but before that, even if we haven't eaten the food yet, we smell the food, we have the smell of it, and then our salivary glands will produce the saliva, and then when we eat it then we will chew it with the saliva, and in the saliva there's the enzymes in it, so it will help to break down a little of those parts. Then that moist clump of food called the bolus is then transported down from the esophagus to our stomach. Now let me show you a picture of the esophagus. The esophagus is a long tube that carries the bolus from here. Here is the mouth cavity or the oral cavity, and then it carries it to the stomach. That is a very long tube. Now, the esophagus pushes the bolus down to the stomach, and the nerves in between in the esophagus part and in our body, it senses the bolus, the piece of bolus, and sends the signals to our brain. And then our body will automatically push down the bolus down to the stomach. And that process is called peristalsis. Now you know where that word comes from now. The stomach. Well, the stomach breaks down the part into chunks, small chunks, and it pounds up the food into small chunks, and then the hormones release acids, gastric juices, and then those juices help to dissolve the food or the bolus that we've eaten. Where does all of that acids and juices come from, you may ask? Well, it came from the liver, the pancreas, and the gallbladder. Firstly, the liver. As you can see here is the liver. The liver helps to produce gastric juices and bile, but mostly gastric juices from our pancreas and many other different things. What does it help us to do? Well, it helps to dissolve the food, but then it also creates bile, which will be essential later. Then first the stomach. We go to the stomach part. It will alert the trio to produce digestive juices and transfer bile to the next stage. Now the fourth stage, the liver. The liver will send the bile to the gallbladder, which then will secrete into chyme. It will secrete into the chyme. What is the chyme? Well, after all the bolus, which is mixed with the gastric juices, then it will become a liquid that is called chyme. Now, then it will come to the duodenum, which is just the first part of the small intestines. Now, the small intestines, it's the duodenum. It will, from the chyme, the bile from the liver will send to the duodenum, and it will secrete into the chyme. It will dissolve more fat into fatty acids, the proteins into amino acids, and the carbohydrates into glucose. So the bile helps to break down those proteins and those carbohydrates. Now, as they move down to the small intestines, the small intestines will have little tiny finger-like projections called villi. Those villi will help to absorb the maximum amount of nutrients and water from the chyme. And from there, they will absorb the final the final nutrients from that chyme, including the proteins, the leftover proteins, fats, and vitamins, as well as other things. Now, as it absorbs all of it, it will come to the large intestines, which is larger than the small intestines, as you can see here. The large intestine is also called the colon. Now, the colon, the dead cells, the water, some fluids, and some fiber will stick together, and there's some little bitty nutrients in there, still in there, but that has not been absorbed by the villi. Therefore, in the large intestines, it will drain out most of the fluids from that stool, called the stool, and then it will absorb the nutrients also, but very little nutrients. Then it will drain, it will be left with the stool. The stool then comes to the end of the large intestines, to the anus. Now here, as you can see, there's this part here called the anus, as you can see. And then when the stool or poo comes to the end of the digestive system process to the anus, there's the nerves down in our bottom will send the signals to our brain telling that we need to push that right down away, because the stool has gone through all of the process and now it needs to be released as waste and as stool. Then the stool exits from our anus, and the end. That is the end of the whole digestive system. Now let's move on to the second part, the second system, the urinary system. Well, the urinary system involves 5 main parts. The first part is the kidneys, the ureters, the bladder, the sphincter, and the urethra. Now, the kidneys is the main organs in the urinary system. What does it do? Well, it has 2 purposes: to filter out the blood and then create urine. So it is very important. Now, what is in the urine? What is in the kidneys? Well, in the kidneys, there are tiny little sacs called nephrons. Now, let me show you. Here is the 2 kidneys, as you can see here. And here is in a nephron, in a single nephron. But there are about 1 million or more nephrons in our whole kidneys. So that's a lot of nephrons. Here's a microscopic view of a nephron here. As you can see, there are different little tubes here. What is its purpose? Well, its purpose is to filter the blood. Like I said before, some of its main purposes is to filter out the blood. And the nephrons help to filter out the blood. Now, firstly, the veins and arteries carry the blood into the kidneys to filter it. It will branch out into little branches until it reaches the nephron. And here is the nephron. There are 2 tubes. The first tube is the tubule and the glomerulus. There are two tubes called the glomerulus, and the tubule. So the glomerulus will help to filter out the blood, and then it will bring the filtered blood to the heart. It will bring out to the heart, and it will join again the circulatory systems. Then, when the formation of urine, which is the waste from the blood, it will come out to a different tube called the tubule, and that tubule will be a part of the ureters. Now, here's the ureters. As you can see, here's the beginning part. This is the beginning part of the tubule, and then it's also called the ureters too. Its main name is called the ureters. There are two lines. There are two tubes of ureters, and that ureter main purpose and only purpose is to carry the urine or pee out to the bladder. And that bladder main purpose is to hold the urine. Hold the urine until it is full. And when it is full, the nerves again in the bladder will send signal to our brain that it is full and we need to release it right now. Now, when there's a signal sent, when we went to the toilet, the muscles in the urethra and the bladder will relax, therefore letting the urine out. The urethra is this tiny little tube that lets the urine out from our hole opening in the other end. Now, that is all for the urinary system. And I think that is all that I have to say for both of these systems. Now let's jump into the final part, the conclusion. Let's have a summary of the digestive and urinary system. The digestive system have several parts. For example, the mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, the duodenum, small intestines, large intestines, you name it. But most of those are part of the gastrointestinal tract, and then there is a trio of organs that helps to produce gastric juices and bile and mainly juices to break down our food, which includes the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. There are 7 main parts. There are 7 main processes that I thought of in the digestive process. How about the urinary system? The urinary system has 5 main parts. The first part is the kidneys, the ureters, bladder, sphincter, and then the urethra. The kidneys will help to filter out the blood and then create urine. In those kidneys, we will have nephrons, about 1 million nephrons. And the glomerulus will only allow vitamins and minerals to pass through the tubule back into the circulatory system, the other part. It will carry out the waste to the ureters, and then it will exit out the bladder. Now the bladder will hold the urine, and when it is full, it will carry to the urethra. The urethra will empty the bladder, will empties the bladder and empties the urine from the bladder out. The digestive system will release waste, which is called stool, and the urinary system will release waste called urine. I hope that from this video you will learn a bit of something from these 2 processes. And that is all I have to say for this video, my main video. Thank you again for listening to my video. I appreciate your time here. If you have any other questions or any other ideas and comments you want to add or comment onto my video, don't hesitate to ask. I will be glad to hear them all. Thank you again, and I hope to see you in the next meeting or next video. Goodbye!